Hello, closers. The first thing I'd like to say is we do try to make this process on closing 1031 exchange transactions as easy as possible for you. With that in mind, I've created this video that I hope you'll find helpful. The first thing is if the exchanger is selling the property, they're the seller, we call this the relinquished property, then we'd like to show our name in the seller box. So we'd say Atlanta Deferred Exchange, Inc., intermediary for whoever is on title to the property. We also like to add or use us as the signature line for the regular closing statement, but to add a separate third line labeled Approved By for the exchanger, the client, to sign. We only review a settlement statement for 1031 format purposes and not for the accuracy of the numbers, so we would like them to sign off on the closing statement. There are two items that tend to be the most common non-allowable exchange expenses that we see from time to time on relinquished closing statements, and they are prorated rents and transfer of security deposits. These are typically handled in the debit and credit method. So the seller would be debited these two amounts, reducing the proceeds. Believe it or not, if it's handled in this fashion, they actually have to pay taxes on that amount of cash because it's treated as if they receive that cash to pay for this non-allowable expense. The solution is for the client, the exchanger, to forward those funds to you, to wire or send them to you in whatever is acceptable for your office, that amount. So, in fact, it won't end up as a debit on the proceeds on their seller's side of this closing statement. Of course, it'll still remain a credit over on the buyer's side. Also, on a HUD statement, line 603, or on other closing statements where it's labeled cash to seller, we prefer this to be zeroed out. If you take that amount and just move it up into the debit section and label it 1031 funds, then it will zero out that bottom line. There is another document called the Notice of Assignment that you will see. This is an important and required 1031 document. We do have a signature line for the buyer, but we also have a signature line that you can sign showing that you acknowledge giving it to them or forwarding it to them. In some cases, you have a mail-out closing and they're not really there in your office. So under those circumstances, I would suggest you just acknowledge signature. That is sufficient. After the closing is complete, please send us back a copy of the signed HUD, of the deed, and of the signed notice. Just scan it and send it via email. We greatly appreciate that. And lastly, don't forget our fee. I hope you found this helpful, and we really do appreciate all that you do.